Hi, everyone. I'm Jen T with Aringo, and today we are going to be talking about crafting your MBA goals. And yes, there is somewhat of a formula. So we'll be talking about that while we wait for folks to join us. If you don't mind, give us a thumbs up and give us a like. And then from there, I would love to have you guys tell us where you're calling for, where you're calling from, where you're joining us from today. Excited to kind of hear where everybody is at. And then, if you can, tell me where you're at in the MBA journey. Are you just getting started? Are you applying this season or next season? Let me know so that we can make sure to answer your specific questions. While we wait, I would also like to plug for the MBA Spotlight that's coming up at the end of the month. Um, During this presentation, I will be talking about learning from MBA programs more about their curriculum and everything and how that kind of like folds into pitching your goals. And so the MBA Spotlight is a great place to go to meet the schools from M7, top 10, top 15, top 25. Lots of amazing MBA programs will be joining during the MBA Spotlight at the end of the month. And as you can see, Abhijit has posted the dates and the link to register for that. All right. Looks like we may be ready to get started. Okay, so I'll jump right in. So again, my name is Jen T with Aringo MBA Admissions Consulting, and today we are going to be talking about the magic formula for putting together your MBA goals. So, to get us started, I'll quickly give you more information about myself. I'm Jen T. I'm the CEO of Aringo MBA Admissions Consulting, and we are an MBA admissions consulting firm. So, we help candidates with crafting their MBA applications. We don't write it, we help you write your own application. And so, we can help you with figuring out which schools you should be applying to, how you should pitch your goals, stories that you should be sharing. And then we can also help you with your interview prep. So, lots and lots of great resources and help that we can provide for you as an MBA admissions consulting firm. And so, if you have questions, we're here to help. And our statistics definitely show that. So, if you look on our website, we have our results posted, but essentially we've helped over 4,000 people get into top 10 MBA programs, and you can see our admissions rates compared to the standard admission rates of the schools here, and as they're audited by EY. So these are great statistics for you to kind of start evaluating by. Awesome. Okay, so we have Shashikant from India. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. All right. So, our agenda for today. First, we're going to talk about the short term and the long term goals. We'll talk about why it's important for an AdCom to be able to see them and understand them. Then, we'll talk about putting it all together and then tailoring it to fit the schools that you're applying to. And then, for some of you who maybe didn't or aren't at that point of like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I just know that I need an MBA or I need to apply to B school. Um, how do I start putting this all together? We're going to help you out. Awesome. Simran, you joined us. And very excited. You're in the pre GMAT stage. I like it. Awesome. So, goal pitching is something that keeps me up at night. Oh, goodness. Well, hopefully, this session is going to help you and many others with learning how to put together those short term and long term goals. And so, again, if you're joining us, please give us a thumbs up and share with your friends. Okay, so first, we're going to talk about short term goals. These goals should be immediate, right? Like, so we're usually talking about when I graduate from the MBA program, I plan to do XYZ. They need to be specific. And so when I graduate from the MBA program, I plan to be a product manager at a tech firm. And so this is, we're going to start putting things together for the admissions committee to see why you need the MBA, and how they're going to help you. You're going to focus on how you're going to acquire the necessary skills and qualifications for that specific position and how you can achieve it within those 1 to 2 years. And then your MBA goals should be a stepping stone toward your long-term goal. Some examples might be, in combining my experiences in oil and gas and the MBA, I aim to secure a senior level role in a renewable energy company such as a wind or solar farm. So you see, again, this is immediately after, and it's putting together what they've done in the past plus what they're going to do in the future. So maybe if you are a career switcher, so you are looking to move into a different role. You might say, like, I'm a software engineer in a technology firm, and I'm looking to advance into product management with a tech giant like Google or Amazon after my MBA. Another one for entrepreneurs might be, after the MBA, I plan to join an early stage startup to gain insights into launching my own tech venture in the fintech space. All right. So, I mean, for me, it seems a little bit easy to put these together, but for you, it can be, if you're just getting started, it can be intimidating, and knowing exactly what you should say and how you should craft that are not as easy as it looks. So, we'll jump into a little bit more about how we put them together after we talk about long-term goals. So long-term goals should be kind of post MBA 10 years, 5, 10 years, just depends on what they are. So like if you wanted to have a startup or create your own business, it might be sooner than 10 years. So just know it's a give and take depending on your specific vision. And then you want to be able to kind of talk about that ultimate career destination. And this is where you can be more inspirational and have a little bit more lofty goals. So then you want to be able to reflect the core values of you and the school, and the purpose behind your short-term, long-term goals within your goals themselves. And then you can also talk about multiple pathways. So sometimes getting from point A to B is not a direct path. And so with that, you can talk about, if this doesn't work, then I'll go this way. And if it doesn't work, then I'll go this way. I'm not necessarily saying that's a great way to pitch your goals in an essay or an application, but definitely something that you'll be asked about during an interview. All right. So here's an example. Here's some examples of what long term goals can look like. So, my goal is to revolutionize Europe's healthcare system by innovatively cutting diagnostic costs and redirecting funds towards improved treatments and facilities. So, again, it can be inspirational and impactful and kind of not as tangible as your short term goal. Um, Another example is, I aim to become the CEO of a global renewable energy organization dedicated to reducing the world's carbon footprint. And then another one is, after a few years in a PM role at a big tech firm, I plan to start my own tech venture in a fintech space, making banking accessible in remote and underdeveloped regions. So, again, you don't have to have all the specifics there, but if you can kind of give a broad overview of what you're wanting to accomplish in the long run, that's what the schools want to hear. So it's like a puzzle piece. So how do we put all these different components together? So an MBA program is going to be looking at everything, and it all needs to kind of come together and fit together, almost like this puzzle, right? So your goals should match your background and be able to kind of um, also be articulated in your either your past experience or your skill set, something like that, so that the MBA admissions team can see it all, how it all connects. And this really helps the admission team with making a decision. And we'll talk a little bit more about what MBA schools or what MBA programs are looking for when they review an application. So, why are goals important? So, they're going to be showing the admissions team your direction and your purpose. And so, for them, they want to make sure that their program is a good fit. So they want to see that direction and purpose. They want to see your motivation and your commitment. Make sure that it aligns with the curriculum and what they're offering. And then they want to make sure it's actionable, right? Like they want to make sure that you can be employed and actually gain a job that makes sense for what your goals are. And then they want you to be able to share measurable success. So being able to know that you will get this job at a company like, right, like again, like we're being very specific in our short-term goals. um, they're going to want to see those outcomes, and be able to technically measure it, because you know who else measures it? The ranking bodies. So when an MBA program is ranked, they will be looking at how many people are employed within 30, 60, 90 days of graduation, and that's what they're looking for, right? Like, are you going to be able to be employed after we graduate? I'm going to keep moving on throughout this presentation, but if you guys have questions along the way, please ask them away and I'll try to answer them, or we can always catch up at the end if I feel like it's a little different from what we're talking about currently. Okay, so now let's put everything together. So we want to leverage your background and your experience. We want to align with the B school values. So you're going to research and understand the school. You're going to craft a strong short term goal. So it should be a logical progression from your background, and it should be specific enough and achievable after you graduate, and related to the skills and education you'll gain from the MBA program, right? So you don't want to cast a doubt if the MBA program is the right fit for you. If you kind of talk about, I want to move into the education sector and create my own ed tech firm, then they might say, okay, so then why not get a master's in education? And being able to show that the MBA is the right way, because you need to be able to balance, the different parts of the business, the teamwork, being able to find partnerships and etc., is more foundational in an MBA than it is in a master's of education. And you can obviously hire partners or partner with people who do have their master's in education in this specific experience. But those are all things that you can do if you have the MBA versus the opposite. And then again, they want to see that this is going to connect to the long term. So, short term should be a stepping stone towards the long term, and explain how everything fits together. And then also, I think that this is also an element for being able to demonstrate your passion and commitment. Earlier, I had mentioned one of the short term goals was working at, like, moving into fintech from product management. Long term, the goal was to start their own fintech company to work on mobile payments and make payments accessible in different regions, or underserved, or sorry, um, to be able to get it to regions that normally don't have that access. And so, with that being said, this passion for payments may be something that happened from, like, the environment you were in. I have a lot of clients from India and Africa that specifically have this goal of working on mobile payments and being able to bring it back and bring new technical innovations to be able to help the unbankable. And so that passion and commitment to the goal is definitely something that the MBA program and in the admissions team want to see, so that they can see that motivation and understand why you need to be part of their MBA program. Simran, what timeframes should one consider for short and long-term goals, respectively? So short term should be immediately after your MBA, right? Like, after the MBA, I want to move into product management at a tech firm. If you're talking about long term, it can usually be about 10 years. Sometimes people might even have a midterm goal, right? Like, so I want to work at a tech, be a product manager at a tech firm. Then I want to move into the strategy role of determining which products we'll be using, and eventually move into the head of I well, I don't know if you want to be, but the head of technology or the head of um, strategy or whatever it might be, like moving into the C level. So, you know, I would say the long term is typically within 10 years, but it can be a little bit shorter depending on, like, one great example is, again, like if you're an entrepreneur, some people might get some startup experience right after they graduate and then move into that, or family business, right? Like that's definitely one of the career areas where somebody might go and study in the US, spend a few years working in the US, gaining those insights, return to their home country, to their family business, and take over or start their own division. So, a lot of really exciting opportunities there. All right. So, how do you tailor your goals to fit the school? So, your MBA goals really shouldn't change all that much from one school to the next, right? Like these goals are who you are and they belong to you. You shouldn't be feeling like you have to fit a square peg into a round hole kind of situation. And so you want to think about, what does an MBA look at when they look at applications? So the first thing that they're evaluating is your academic readiness, right? Like, so do you have, the right GPA, exam score, certifications, those types of things, right? Like they want to make sure that you're going to be ready for their curriculum. Then they're going to look at your employment background. They're going to want to see what you've done in the past and how much you've been exposed to different parts of the business, right? Because the foundations of an MBA program are going to be, accounting, finance, marketing, supply chain, many others. And so, with that foundation, they want to make sure you've been exposed to the different parts of business. Not necessarily you've worked in them, but you understand their function in the business. So you have a basic understanding, so that when you get in that class, you have a reference point for what this department does and how it runs, and then eventually how you would manage them, whether that's managing the finance department directly or indirectly. So then they also want to look at your employability. How likely is it that you're going to get a job in the field that you're looking at, right? Like, do your goals align with who typically comes to campus and recruits for us? And then school fit, right? So each school has their own special take on curriculum, as well as the student clubs and activities that they host. Like, I know that, like at Booth, they actually are part of holding an economic forum, which is really exciting. So, that's something that might interest you in the finance world. And then, along with, your personal and professional development. So, are we the right place for you? So, this is what they're looking at. And so when we take this deep dive, we want to look at what the school's offerings are. So, what kind of curriculum do they have? Do they have career tracks or specialties that make sense specifically for you? A lot of people want to move into sports management and they're like, oh, I want to go to a top MBA program. But like the MBA programs that are ranked the highest in sports management actually aren't even in like the top 25. So it's, when you're crafting your goals, you got to make sure that you can articulate that I want to go into sports management utilizing the entertainment and management track to be able to hone in my specific skills along with the data analytics of this program or something like that, right? Then you want to make sure that you're aligning with the school's values, make sure that everything kind of makes sense and resonates with them. If you are saying that I want to, work in investment banking, and or like have my own fund, and make, be, very profitable for me and my shareholders. When you go to apply for schools like Yale or Stanford or Tuck, without some sort of social impact side, it might not be a culture fit for you because these schools are focused more on business doing good versus just making profits, and being able to do both and navigate both worlds. So that's an instance where maybe values don't exactly align. And then you want to be able to show that you've connected with alumni and worked within the network to make sure that you're going to have that support system whenever you move into the actual professional world. And again, it makes sense for you. So there are some schools, sorry, there are some schools that maybe have this persona of like, oh, Wharton is a finance school. Um, that doesn't mean that you can't go to that school. So I just want to make sure clearing up that misnomer, even though they might be seen as a finance school, they want candidates from all different disciplines to be part of the program because that makes a spectacular classroom experience when people have different industry or function experience and they get to talk about it in the classroom, how it's applicable to what you're studying specifically that day or in that class, and what you bring to case studies, all these really fun things. And so I don't want you to think like, oh, if they're known as a finance school, that's the only type of network or that's the only type of thing that they're going to offer. By doing your research, you can find that you could actually have, you know, a, an actual like or um, social impact or sustainability goals and be a really good fit for a school like Wharton or Booth. So just, don't necessarily take that overall persona as like end all be all for that specific school. All right. So now here is kind of this section. When I was crafting this, it's like, you know I bet you there's a ton of people who maybe are kind of at the very beginning part of this stage and they're like, I don't know what I need to do. So this is where the formula starts coming together. Before you start, you want to do some self reflection. Start thinking about the skills and passions and strengths that you have, and think about how that's going to play into what you want to do in the future. I'm a person who's always been interested in helping others. This has led to my interest in social impact, right? So you want to research MBA programs and make sure that they're a good fit for you. So, one thing that I also kind of a caveat that I want to share here is that certain MBA programs, when you go in their career section, they have a lot of information about specific sectors and functions. One of those is UCLA Anderson. They by far have the best career outcome page to just kind of help you with seeing, okay, if I went on the like tech trek, these are the functions I could that usually get hired from UCLA and the actual employers that typically hire there. Now, do I say everybody has to apply for UCLA Anderson? Not exactly. But what I do say is that you can use the resources to kind of help you with generating ideas, especially when you say you have kind of a vague goal. This can help you with starting to narrow it down to make it more specific to fit you. Um, okay, so then again, like after we kind of do the research, we want to make sure that our short term and long term goals clearly define what you want to do when you graduate, and then what you're going to do to get towards that long term goal. And you want to be specific about the roles and industries, and kind of what you're wanting to do in that industry to leave your mark or your legacy. So you want to be able to connect to your past experiences. So this is kind of very similar of like if you want to talk about as a as a software engineer, I've been able to create systems that have impacted um, the functionality of a tool for clients, SaaS, or something like that, like the functionality of an app. And with this experience, I want to take it to a more broad level and be able to move into product management and manage all the parts and pieces and own it from infancy through the very end of legacy. Um, then we also want to show again, the fit of the school. And so how it's going to help you with achieving your goals. So, you can talk about the resources, the faculty and alumni. So, there's definitely like centers for entrepreneurship, centers for for sustainability, um, different initiatives for DEI or diversity inclusion. And then there's also, family owned business centers as well. Look this all up, whatever you're most interested in. There's incubators, accelerators, those types of things that every MBA program has, or the business school, or even the campus at large might have, that can play into how they help your career. Then you want to highlight your personal motivation. MBA programs in this current age are into what I think like a lot of people will say, like, I'm in my personalization era. So Taylor Swift. So, they currently want to have individuals that are going to be part of their MBA program. They're curating a class. And so, with that being said, you can be very personal about why you're motivated to do this, right? Like, so, um, as a child, I was, very sick and had to go from one hospital to the next. And so this has made me always want to improve the patient experience. And so this is why I want to overhaul, the health system in Europe and redirect funds from diagnostics to the actual client relationship, or well, client patient experience, right? So that could definitely be a way to connect things and be very personal. um, if you don't have that personal connection, it's also okay. It doesn't have to be like that deep. It could just be, I really have a passion and a knack for technology or project management or product management or something like that, that you can be able to make it span across your goals and how it identifies with you as a individual. So um, 462, yes, you want to know if we help provide information for MIM. Yes, absolutely. So when we talk about MIM and short term and long term goals, it's a little bit different, right? Because most people who are going into a master's in management program haven't had much work experience. So you have less to rely on as far as like basing your career goals on what you want to do based on what you've experienced, right? Because you're still at that infancy of your career. So you'll want to talk about internships, or again, like anywhere that you're specifically passionate about. We had a client go to the IMD and master's in management program, and she grew up in the equine environment of horses, and so she was like in the process of creating some sort of equestrian device. And so that was something she was really passionate about, but she didn't have any work experience. And so being able to connect that passion along with the knowledge of the industry or her hobby, that she was able to kind of make this connection, and show them, like, this is what I want to do. I want to develop this product and run a business. And so this is what I want to do after my master's in management. Um, you know, long term, those are going to be a little bit more vague, right? Like 10, 15 years down the road. So I think it's okay to also address maybe a midterm goal, if you feel like it's a very lofty long term goal. All right. So adapting to the school. So again, this is this moment where you don't want to change your goals so much. You want to tweak it, just for like maybe the career tracks or even like the language of like what they're saying. So um, many schools have what they call like a healthcare management track, where Fuqua at Duke, they have a health solutions management track. So they refer to it as HSM versus HCM. And so, even using that different terminology in the same goal is helping the school understand you've done your research, you know them, and you understand that that track is something that specific to you and why you want to go that direction. The other part that I would definitely say should or could change from one school to the next is the employers. So you can look at the career section of the MBA website, or you can look at their employment report. This is what I often tell our clients to do, is to go and look at the school's employment report. This is like even down to like school selection and making sure that there's companies and functions and roles that make sense to you. And so, if you want to go into sustainability and only 3% of their graduates go into sustainability, then it's going to be tough, or you have to go talk about going into sustainability within the industry. So, working in the sustainability department at a corporation, right? Or consulting, whichever one that might be. So, just kind of take that piece in mind whenever you're crafting your short-term and long-term goals for specific schools. The other thing is like everybody says they want to work for Amazon, Google, Apple. I will also recommend that people kind of throw in a second, like the second or third employer be someone like Adobe or Microsoft or Intel or HP, like something like that, to kind of again show that you've done your research as to like who the top employers are at that specific school, and also showing that I don't have to be employed at these top companies, even though that's what I want, that I'm open to taking these jobs to get to where I need to be, plan A, plan B. Same thing with consulting firms. So if you say that you want to go into management consulting at a firm like BCG or McKinsey or Deloitte or EY Parthenon, or you know what I mean? So like you can either mention other consulting firms that fit your specific angle that you're interested, like AT Kearney is like a bit more towards um HR side of things, and or I think like Corn Ferry is actually much more HR. But anyway, so there's different boutique consulting firms that you can also mention so that the school, again, knows where you're wanting to go and that you've done your research as to who's hiring at their school. So back to the presentation, you want to be realistic. And so, again, short-term goals should be achievable. Uh, Obviously, post graduation from the MBA program, it shouldn't be a job you could go out and get tomorrow. It could be a job you can get in 2 or 3 years, which is why you want the MBA to accelerate that career path. But you want them to be achievable. And then you want to be able to ask for feedback, talk to different people from different, like even contacting the clubs at a specific school and saying, like, oh, I mean, I feel like consulting is way too general, but like, let's say that you want to like join the tech world. And so you want to say, like, I want to become a product manager at a company like XYZ. Reaching out to the tech student group or the tech club might be a great way to say, like, hey, like, are these like good companies to pitch, or different roles, are these the good ones to talk about, especially when we get more niche like fintech or a startup, or other things like that. Like the entrepreneurship club will help you with finding out like who the startups are in the area, or talking about internships and like who you should intern with. There's a lot of insight that you can gain from actually engaging with the school to figure out how you want to craft your goals, and then that helps trickle down to any other school that you apply to, and being able to figure out what you need to research to be able to craft your short term and your long term goals. And then from there, you want to be able to practice and refine your short term and your long term goals. You want to be able to talk about it and be concise, and be able to write it, because this is by far, like every time I start a conversation is, walk me through your resume, share your short term and your long term goals. Those are the first things I always start with, because I want to get to know people and why MBA is relevant for them. And those are the relevant questions. And so practicing them will be very helpful as you go through this process, because that's everybody's going to ask, like, what's your short term and your long term goal? And you want to be able to say it really quickly, and be able to give a little bit of background and relevance for why this is what you want to do. Okay, so I know that I went through this really quickly, and that there's a lot of deep thinking that has to go on. So I'm open for questions, or if you want to kind of share like what you're wanting to do, I'm happy to see if maybe we can craft your short term, long term goals um, right here live while we do this. So go ahead and put things into the comments for me. And then while we wait, um, if anybody else has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. But you know, in the meantime, obviously I'm going to say a little bit more about me and what I do. But if you're interested in, doing a profile evaluation or talking through your short-term, long-term goals, I'm happy to meet with you. At the bottom of the presentation, there is a link to my Calendly, and you can always set up a time to chat via this link. And again, like if you want to talk about your short-term, long-term goals, just mention that in the actual in the like the meeting notes of what you're wanting to talk about. All right, things still look quiet. So again, like if you want to talk about short-term and long-term goals and how to pitch them, um, bring them over. Um, while we wait, I am going to go back to, sorry, I'm going to maybe I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, and then I'm going to get my PowerPoint back to where I want to be, where we can talk about these short-term and long-term goals examples so that they can. Now let's see if I can go back to presenting. I don't know if I can by myself. And if not, then it'll be okay. We'll live without it. Oop. Yeah, there we go. I messed up. Anyways, that's totally fine. So again, where's everybody at? Like, any questions that you guys have? I want to make sure that we do talk about this magic formula that you for crafting your MBA goals. So again, you need to put together something that relies on your past and how it connects to your future, and combined with an MBA where you're going to go next. So let me think of a current client that I can um, talk about. So today, I was just doing an interview prep for someone who has worked in the tech business in many different capacities. So within startups, and then she like ended up at Salesforce for the past 2 years. She's applying to the Cornell Tech MBA program, and her goal, her original degree was in law, and it was business and law degree. And now she wants to move into tech and work in a tech firm to eventually start her own venture. Um, and so, the way that I would pitch walking through kind of tell me about your short term and your long term goals is, you know, um, when I first started my studies, I always knew that I was passionate about law and business and how they work together. So right after graduation, I did my articleship with at the economic forum in my home country, and was able to see how business and economics really work together. From there, I worked at a couple of startups and gained experience learning how new ventures get started, and like I learned a lot about a lean group and environment. And now at Salesforce, I'm managing things on a corporate level and seeing how technology impacts our clients. After the MBA, I want to move into a product management role at a tech firm that's focused on big data, AI, or machine learning. And then from there, I want to move into my own venture that's focused on AI and personalization. So that was kind of like, tell me about yourself plus goals. So if we kind of broke that down to just short term, long term goals, then you can talk about, I want to utilize my experience across startups, tech tech startups and corporates to be able to move into the tech world focused on AI, big data, and machine learning to gain experience to start my own venture in this realm, focused around personalization um, in fashion and food. So hopefully that was helpful. We've got a couple of questions, so I'm very excited that people have sent me some things to consider. Thank you. Okay, so my short-term goal is to secure a management consulting position at an MBB, and my long-term goal is to open my own consulting agency to help Chinese companies tap into the Western market. I think that's fantastic. Like, I think these are great goals. So the only thing I would say from there is that, if you have a background. Oh, okay. So you wanted to know if this was a little bit vague. So I don't think it's too vague. The way that you could make it even more specific is, I want to work in a management consulting position at an MBB that's focused on global clients or globalization and or scaling or something like that, right? It's like, so you can be slightly more specific about what you want to do. If you have a background working for maybe an anomaly like a Chinese business that is actually tapped into the Western market, then you can say, like, taking my experience from X company and learning how they were able to break into the market. I want to get my MBA, take a few years at a consulting firm that focuses on globalization, and return to China and help Chinese businesses break into the Western market via my consulting firm or my consulting skills or something like that. Yeah, so they can be a little bit more specific that way. You could also, the other part of that would be, um, instead of just MBB, you could say, one of the three plus another consulting firm that makes like kind of like the fourth or fifth highest employing firm at that specific school. So, again, like EY or Deloitte. Okay. Next, Rishav. Should the short-term goals be a logical progression as per our previous experience? What if the experience has been in product management, but post MBA one wishes to switch to consulting? Okay, perfect. So um, you can definitely use this to like your experience as product management to be able to talk about how you want to move to consulting. So after X years of working in product management, I've learned a lot where a lot of efficiencies lie in this industry. I want to move into consulting post MBA to be able to help companies on a um, much higher or larger scale to solve these inefficiencies and be more productive as a company, something like that. And then you can talk about, like, in the long term, what you'd want to do, like continue moving up um, into the partnership, or whether you want to move into the industry or start your own business. All right. Simran, would a less lucrative short term goal be considered a disadvantage? I'd like to pivot from an industry that's presently thriving to one that's fairly competitive and a whole new geography. Can I win the Adkins over with passion alone? Not the preceding comments confirming my suspicion, but consulting being in a competitive field. Okay, so Simran, I'm so sorry. This is maybe a little bit too vague for me, but I think if you wanted to move into a less lucrative field, that's okay. Um, I don't think that it's necessarily about how much money you're going to make. I mean, obviously, schools are going to be judged on how much their candidates make pre and post MBA. So, like, that's definitely there. Um, but you can, sorry, just want to shrink this screen real quick so that I can see your questions. So again, it's not about being less lucrative. It's about something that makes sense for you specifically. Um, okay. So if you want to share more specific information, happy to answer that either via the chat, or you can always schedule a time to meet with me. Okay. So my Chinese Western market guy person. You so sorry, I can't see your picture. So I apologize. So the person interested in Chinese markets Chinese companies breaking into the Western market with a background in media, again, like that might need to kind of be more it's too vague for me to kind of give you how to match that with your previous experience to your future. And that could even be like seeing like how narrow the field is specifically in media or whatever it might be, and how much of the market space they're missing by not approaching or being afraid to approach the Western world, that they're missing out on business and they need to be able to expand and scale, and this is something you've noticed and you want to be a part of that expansion. Antonio Maria. What if you have a company sponsorship? Okay, so if you are sponsored by your company, things are a little bit easier. So the reason is because you're already going to be employed when you graduate. And they know that you're typically going to be bound by X number of years to continue working for that same company. So it's okay to talk about, when I return from my MBA, I'm excited to apply the MBA knowledge and move into XYZ department or working with XYZ clients or customers, sub or a different segment or a different function, and then talk about your long term. I want to move into head of this department, or on the executive level or C level of this department, or become a partner, whatever it might be. Or if it's outside of the consulting world, or I'm sorry, out of the company that you're sponsored in, you can talk about, like, then be able to move to industry and apply my consulting and MBA knowledge to do XYZ. But definitely being sponsored is definitely very helpful. So just know that they know that your goals have to be kind of centered around immediately returning to that company. Just talk about what's going to be different when you return. Um, I did 462. Yash, you did a BA in OHS and trying for a MIM. Did a BA in math, was applying to MIM, have an interest in gaming. Well, that's awesome. So if we're talking about combining math, programming, and gaming all together, then I think that getting the business perspective, because gaming could easily lead into computer science. So it's, why would you want a master's in management versus a master's in computer science, or something similar, like where you're actually building the gaming platform, it's like building the game itself. So if it's, where you're wanting to go is into gaming, then you can say that I want to get the master's in management so I can gain industry knowledge and be able to move into the business side of gaming, utilizing my mathematic or scientific background. um, Is there any MBA program on new energy or biofuel industry? So, yes. um, so I think that most of them will always kind of have it under um, either sustainability or energy sector on their website or their employment. Um, report. And so, with that being said, there's going to be certain regions that will definitely have more specific energy related fields. So, like, I'm not sure where you're wanting to apply, but like UT Austin McCombs has a strong energy sector. Um, for their MBA because they're located in Texas near a lot of oil fields. So that's definitely helpful. And they're used to that industry. And they also attract a lot of people who want to move into the alternatives. And so, you can either focus on that or focus on schools that are much more interested or well known for sustainability. So the schools in the Netherlands, and Germany, in that part of Europe, definitely are the most well known for sustainability programs. So IMD, RSM, ESMT in Germany, those schools are actually the top in those programs. So it's something that you're very interested in, and that is your main goal. Then ranking of MBA programs might not be the most important to you. The most important thing might be able to make an impact in that side of the industry or sector, and maybe shift where you decide to apply for your MBA. Um, Simran, apologize for the things. I'd like to pivot from fintech to consulting in Singapore. Specifically, my worry is that consulting seems to be everyone's go-to these days. Is it lackluster? So, I mean, I think that you can obviously talk about your experience in this specialized field of fintech and how you want to be able to move it to a larger platform and serve more people and help use your industry specific information or knowledge to be able to help people on a larger scale, or help like something that you've specifically seen in the industry that doesn't make sense or that's missing. So being able to solve that problem, right? Because that's what a consultant does, right? Like, so, why would you go into consulting, or what's the objective of a consultant? And so consulting helps many different businesses on a larger scale with specific problems. And so if that's something that interests you, talk about that from whatever angle that might be. So, going from helping your specific company where you solved a problem to being able to solve a problem for many people. So, I don't think that it's lackluster or it's not okay to use consulting. I would just make sure that you make it more specific to you and why you want to move into it. Again, saying MBB is there's two parts to that. One is MBB, I mean, obviously, they're gonna cover most fields. The you know, they're gonna have a diverse array of, like, what they do, but if there are um, specific firms that deal in fintech, then maybe that's where you kind of say, like, McKinsey and XYZ firm, Deloitte or EY, right? Like, so, making sure that you're matching up to the specific firms that hire or work in that space. And then you can kind of customize it from there. Um, let's start with mine. I have a background in banking, specifically treasury analytics, looking to go into investment banking or venture capital, which is better to do. I have a passion for both. Okay. So, with your experience in it's okay. Sorry. Getting a little excited here. So, the most common career goals of MBA for MBAs are going to be consulting, finance, investment banking, VC, PE, or product management. Those are like by far the most common. And it's okay to pitch those. And again, like where we've kind of talked about this with a couple of different folks, is that you want to make sure you make it specific to you. And then I think the other part is showing that you're okay, that you have a plan B, or you're open to working like in an intermediate step if you need to, right? So I would say that maybe working in investment banking would come before going into VC. So maybe that's how you start your experience. So if you're coming from like computer science and saying you want to move into investment banking, That's a really huge leap to a very competitive field. So the difference for Bino D is that he has this or he or she has this experience in treasury analytics. So you have this finance foundation. So it's okay to say that you want to go into investment banking. I would talk about a specific sector or something specific about investment banking that you're wanting to go into, and then how that feeds into the long-term goal of moving into PEVC world with specific funds, etc. So I think for you, it's totally fine to talk about wanting to move into investment banking and then PE or VC. Sorry. Hi, I have a BA in maths, but I did not have an interest in math. So how do I justify my bachelor's? Can I say it was due to financial reasons? So 462, Yash. I'm not exactly sure what that means. Does it mean that you have a low GPA when you didn't have an interest in it? And I don't know how your major ties into financial reasons. So again, I could definitely help you offline and we can talk one on one if you want to schedule a time to chat via my Calendly. I will have um, hold on one second. Well, I mean, I'll make this happen while we talk. Um, but with everything being said, sometimes things are just like a little too individualized where I can't exactly help um, on the individual level, via our conversation. So, with that being said, like, please schedule a time for you and I to meet and we can talk about it a little bit more in depth in your personal situation. I'm going to have Abhijit post my link for the GMAT Club profile so that you can have that and schedule it. All right. So I think we've answered a lot. Does anybody else have any scenarios they want to go through, or anybody want to try to pitch their own short-term, long-term goals while we have a captive audience? So Yash, I'm having Abhijit post my link. I think. Let's see if I can do it. Ooh, I don't know if I can do it as a presenter. Um, It's not letting me connect, but I will make sure that it's, oh, there we go. Thanks, Abhijit. So if you see GMAT Club, he just posted the link to schedule an appointment with me. So again, does anybody want to try to pitch their short-term or long-term goals while we have an audience that could help provide some feedback while people are getting the courage to do so? Again, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I really appreciate you guys joining in and sharing everything about yourselves during this. I know that it's vulnerable. And so, with that being said, please like the video and share it with your friends. I'd love for them to get to know more about, putting together their short term and their long term goals.